Life has a way of settling its own scores. Every action has a consequence, every intention leaves an imprint, and every move against you, whether out of jealousy, spite, or arrogance, becomes a trap of their own making. The universe plays no favorites, but it does ensure that those who try to plant thorns in your path will eventually find themselves walking barefoot on their own destruction. They thought they were clever, didn't they? Thought they could manipulate, mock, and sabotage without consequence. But what they failed to realize is that when you come for someone who is destined, the balance of life doesn't just protect them, it turns against you. You've seen it happen. The ones who secretly despised you, who laughed at your struggles, who worked tirelessly behind the scenes to see you fail, where are they now? Scrambling, drowning in the very negativity they created. There's an old saying, the wind that uproots a tree only proves how deep its roots were. That's the power of being chosen. The more they try to shake you, the stronger you stand. The more they scheme, the more life aligns in your favor. They don't understand it, and that's what terrifies them the most. It's not just that you win, it's that their efforts to bring you down become the very fuel that propels you forward. See, your enemies aren't just your enemies. They are the architects of their own downfall. When they move against you, they activate a force they cannot control. It's like playing with fire, thinking it won't burn. Every word spoken against you, every whisper in the dark, every plot woven in secret, it all folds back onto them, folding tighter, strangling their ambitions. And you keep rising. They call it karma, energy, fate, the laws of cause and effect. Call it what you want. The truth remains, no one escapes the consequences of their own intentions. The weight they tried to put on your shoulders is now breaking their own backs. The walls they built to block your way have become the prison they can't escape from. They laugh at you. Soon they'll be staring in the mirror, wondering why nothing in their life is going right. And here's the irony. They still don't realize that you are the reason why. It haunts them. Your presence, your resilience, your ability to rise no matter how hard they push you down. You live in their minds rent-free, an unshakable reminder that they were never as powerful as they thought. The very idea of you threatens them, because every time they look at you, they are reminded of something they can't stand to face, their own failure. That's the real fear. Not that you exist, but that you thrive. Not that you move forward, but that you do it despite them. That no matter what they say, no matter what they do, you are untouchable. And that's why they can't sleep at night. Chosen ones, if you feel this, if you know deep down that you were never meant to be ordinary, then this message is for you. Like this video, subscribe, share it with those who need to hear it. Because the world needs more people who walk in their truth, untouched by the noise, unfazed by the weak attempts of those who wish they could be in their place. Let them try, let them whisper, let them plot, and watch as life teaches them the lesson they never saw coming. Number 1. Beware, mockery opens a door to your deepest truth. They thought it was harmless, a casual laugh, a throwaway joke, a way to make themselves feel superior for just a moment. They never expected that their own words would turn into shackles, locking them inside a truth they weren't ready to face. But that's the thing about playing with energy. You don't get to decide how it comes back to you. When they spoke your name, when they dragged your presence into that space, thinking they had the upper hand, they did something irreversible. They opened a door, Not just any door, but a portal into their own hidden fears, insecurities, and suppressed thoughts. They came expecting entertainment, expecting to mock, but instead they walked straight into their reckoning. At first, they laughed, confident, smug, but the air shifted. The moment they heard the first few words, the smile faltered. The psychic wasn't feeding them nonsense, wasn't spinning a story for their amusement. No, this was something else. Something they weren't prepared for. The psychic didn't just speak about you, they spoke about them, about the twisted, tangled energy they carried every time they thought of you. The way their resentment, jealousy, and fixation had been growing like a parasite inside them, unnoticed, until now. You see, people like them never realize how loud their energy speaks. They pretend their thoughts are private, that no one can sense their ill intentions, their envy, their need to see you fail. But energy doesn't lie. And in that moment, every concealed thought, every hidden resentment was dragged into the light. The reading was never about you. It was about them, about why they couldn't let go, about why your name, your success, your very presence had lodged itself into their mind like an unsolvable riddle. They weren't just curious about you, they were obsessed. And that's when the fear set in. Because the more they heard, the more they realized the joke had turned against them. Their laughter had been a disguise, a flimsy cover for the discomfort they felt whenever they saw you rise. And now, stripped of their defenses, all that remained was the truth. They didn't walk out of that session laughing. They walked out shaken, questioning everything they thought they knew. Not just about you, but about themselves. Why had they cared so much? Why had your existence unsettled them so deeply? And, worst of all, what did it mean for their own future? Because the universe doesn't let actions go unanswered. When you tamper with energy, when you try to play with someone else's destiny, you don't just walk away clean, you trigger a response. They thought they were mocking you. Instead, they invited a lesson they will never forget. The kind of lesson that doesn't just humiliate, it haunts. Number 2. Stop running from your reflection. The joke is on you. They thought it was all fun and games, a little laugh at your expense, a casual joke to make themselves feel bigger. But what they didn't realize was that mockery is a dangerous game, one that has a way of flipping the script when you least expect it. They sat there, smug and entertained, thinking they were in control of the moment. They had planned this out. Walk into the session, throw your name around like it was nothing, get a cheap laugh, and walk out feeling superior. But the universe had other plans. Because the moment the psychic began to speak, the joke took on a life of its own. The laughter died in their throats as something colder crept in. Recognition. The reading wasn't about you, it was about them. The psychic didn't describe some exaggerated flaw about you for them to mock. Instead, they peeled back layers of the mocker's own reality, exposing wounds, fears, and weaknesses they had spent years trying to hide. It was as if someone had turned a mirror toward them, one they couldn't look away from. The cracks in their confidence, the hidden bitterness, the unspoken insecurities, all of it laid bare in a way that left them stunned. They thought they were coming to expose you, to ridicule, to minimize. But instead, they were the ones being stripped down, layer by layer, until all that remained was the uncomfortable truth. And here's what hit them hardest. Their fixation on you wasn't about curiosity or harmless teasing. It was never about you at all. It was about them, their jealousy, their self-doubt, the fact that you represent something they wish they could have, something they secretly resent themselves for lacking. They wanted to laugh. They wanted to brush it off. But some truths, once spoken, can't be unheard. They left that session shaken, replaying every word, every revelation. Because now, no matter how hard they try to go back to their old ways, they can't unsee what was revealed to them. The joke was never on you. It was on them. And that's the kind of realization that doesn't just sting. It lingers, haunting them in ways they never saw coming. Number 3. : Don't play with energy. It always finds a way back. They thought it was just a name, just a conversation. But when they sat down and spoke about you, laughing at your expense, they unknowingly set something in motion that was far beyond their control. The universe doesn't play games when it comes to the chosen ones. The moment they turned you into a joke, they set off a ripple effect that would come crashing back onto them. In the world of energy, intention is everything. And their intention? It was tainted, dripping with arrogance, jealousy, and a desire to see you diminished. But the unseen forces don't work that way. Energy is not a toy. And when they directed their negativity toward you, they weren't just speaking, they were summoning. The psychic didn't just hear your name. They felt the shift in the air, the weight of what had been set in motion. It wasn't about you anymore. The moment they tried to turn you into a spectacle, the energy turned against them. Instead of hearing funny stories at your expense, they found themselves drowning in their own reflection. Patterns, karmic cycles, unfinished business they had buried deep. It all started surfacing, and suddenly the room wasn't filled with laughter anymore. It was filled with a truth so raw, so undeniable, that it made them squirm in their seat. Because they hadn't just spoken about you, they had disturbed something sacred. They thought they could mock a chosen one and walk away unscathed. But the universe doesn't allow that. Their words carried weight. Their actions had consequences. And now, those consequences were unfolding right in front of them. Instead of walking out of that session with a joke to tell, they walked out haunted by what they had set in motion, by the realization that they had tampered with something far greater than they could comprehend. They had triggered a force they couldn't control, and now they weren't laughing, they were trembling. Number 4. : Wake up, you are not the victim, you're the catalyst. They walked into that session thinking they had the upper hand. They thought they were in control, ready to reduce you to a joke, a fleeting moment of amusement at your expense. But the universe has a way of flipping the script in ways they never see coming. The moment they uttered your name, something shifted. A door they weren't prepared to face swung open, exposing everything they had been trying to run from. They thought this reading would be about you, but instead, it became a brutal mirror. One that forced them to confront the ugliest truths about themselves. The psychic didn't just acknowledge your existence, they laid out a reality that shattered their ego. You were never just another person in their life. You were the turning point. Your presence, whether distant or direct, wasn't something they could dismiss. It had weight, power, and undeniable influence, and they were forced to admit it. Because their fixation on you wasn't random, it was a symptom, a sign that something inside them was unfulfilled, unresolved. Whether they envied you, resented you, or secretly admired you, It all pointed back to the same undeniable truth. You triggered something in them that they were too afraid to face. They had spent so much time mocking you, underestimating you, trying to convince themselves that you didn't matter. And yet, here they were, so consumed by your existence that they needed a psychic to explain why. And then came the final blow, the one that shattered any illusion they had about themselves. The psychic revealed the truth they had buried so deep they didn't even want to whisper it to themselves. Their obsession with you had never been about you. It was about their own failures, their own fears, their own insecurities. You were living proof of something they had convinced themselves was unreachable, a reality they were too afraid to claim for themselves. So instead of rising, instead of facing their own shortcomings, they fixated on trying to tear you down. But fate had different plans. What started as a joke became their reckoning. They walked in thinking they could reduce you, but by the time they left, they were the ones who felt small. You weren't their victim. You were their wake-up call, and there was no running from the truth they had just uncovered. Number 5. : Stop acting like the hunter. You're already the prey. They walked in with smug confidence, convinced they were in control. To them, this was a game, a moment to poke fun at you, to dissect your existence like predators circling their prey. They thought they were the ones holding the weapon, that they could reduce you to a punchline, a joke for their own amusement. But the moment they uttered your name, everything changed. The energy in the room shifted, sharp, electric, suffocating. The psychic didn't play along. They didn't indulge in cheap gossip or petty mockery. Instead, they paused, eyes narrowing, as if they had just stumbled upon something far greater than anyone in that room could comprehend. And then, with a single sentence, the entire game flipped. The reading wasn't about you. It was about them. Every word exposed them, every hidden thought, every buried insecurity, every ounce of jealousy they had tried to mask under sarcasm and fake laughter. It was all laid bare. They had come in thinking they would pick you apart, but instead, they found themselves under the microscope. The hunter had become the hunted. The psychic didn't entertain their narrative. They didn't talk about you the way these people expected. Instead, they asked the real question: why are you so obsessed? What is it about this person that makes you restless? Why does their presence make you uncomfortable? Why does their success, their resilience, their very existence gnaw at you in ways you can't explain? The answers cut deep. Because the truth was undeniable. It was never about you. It was about them. Their fixation wasn't just curiosity. It was a desperate attempt to bring down something they knew they could never reach. They wanted control. They wanted to feel powerful by diminishing someone who stands tall without their validation. But the psychic saw through them. Every insult they had prepared, every weakness they hoped to expose about you, it all ricocheted back onto them. They walked in convinced they were the ones holding the power. But by the time they left, they weren't just shaken. They were completely unarmed. No laughter, no smugness, no confidence, just the chilling realization that they had been exposed in the cruelest way possible. They played themselves, and now they can't escape it. Number 6. Your negativity won't touch them. It will only reflect back on you. They thought they were in control, thought they were the ones pulling the strings, laughing at your expense, making a joke out of your name. But the universe doesn't work that way. When you are chosen, your presence alone commands power, whether they admit it or not. And when they consulted that psychic, expecting petty entertainment, they were forced to confront a reality they weren't prepared for. The session started off light, just as they had planned. They smirked, expecting gossip, something they could twist into a joke later. But as soon as your name entered the conversation, the air shifted. The psychic's demeanor changed. This wasn't just another reading. This was an unveiling, one that exposed the uncomfortable truth they had been running from. Instead of meaningless details about your life, the psychic spoke about them, about how much of their mental space you occupied, about how, whether they admitted it or not, they had tethered themselves to your energy. You weren't just someone they mocked. You were someone they couldn't stop thinking about. And that's when the humiliation hit. Because they had convinced themselves that you didn't matter, that their words, their opinions, their little games gave them power over you. But instead, the truth was laid bare. They were the ones trapped in your orbit. You had unknowingly become the measuring stick for their every move. Their actions, their emotions, even their self-worth. So much of it had been shaped by the unspoken influence you held over them. Hearing this from a psychic, a complete stranger who knew nothing of their hidden obsession, was like being stripped of their last illusion. The facade of detachment they had built collapsed in an instant. And the worst part, you never even knew. While they spent their energy trying to diminish you, you had already surpassed them. While they obsessed, you evolved. While they plotted, you thrived. They left that session shaken, haunted by the realization that you weren't just some fleeting thought. You were the mirror reflecting everything they feared, the force they couldn't escape, the lesson they weren't ready to learn. And that truth, it will haunt them forever. Number 7. When you mock, karma will strike with unseen power. They thought it would be fun. Drag your name into their little game, turn you into a joke, feed their ego at your expense. They didn't realize they were stepping into something far bigger than their shallow intentions. They played with energy they couldn't control. And when you tamper with forces beyond your understanding, they don't just respond, they strike back. What started as amusement quickly turned into something else entirely. The moment they sat down, the energy in the room shifted. They had expected a spectacle, a moment to laugh, to hear something ridiculous about you. Instead, they got something terrifying, a mirror held up to their own soul. The psychic didn't speak about you the way they expected. Instead of tearing you down, the reading exposed them. Every word was like a precision strike, unraveling the truth they had been running from. Their resentment, their bitterness, their need to diminish you. It was all laid bare, right in front of them. The universe doesn't care for theatrics. It deals in truth. And the truth hit them like a storm. What they had hoped would be a joke turned into a reckoning. The energy they had projected toward you had wrapped itself around them like a noose. The same negativity they sent your way now sat in the room with them. Undeniable, unshakable. Every insult they thought of, every ill-intended word they had spoken, had started shaping their reality before their very eyes. They weren't laughing anymore. They were squirming, their smugness wiped clean as they were forced to confront something chilling. Their downfall had already begun. Because the universe doesn't operate on empty words. It listens, it balances, and it never forgets. By the time they walked out, they weren't just shaken, they were marked. Marked by the weight of their own actions, haunted by the realization that what they had done had set something irreversible into motion. The psychic didn't need to punish them. Their own energy did that for them. They had thought mocking you would make them feel powerful. Instead, it revealed the weakness they had been trying to hide. Because in the end, mocking someone else doesn't elevate you. It exposes where you're broken. And now they have no choice but to face it. Number 8. Face the truth. Your fear of their potential will destroy you. They thought they were about to hear something insignificant, something they could twist into a joke, mock, and toss aside like it meant nothing. But what they got instead, the truth they had been running from all along. The psychic didn't tell them what they wanted to hear. No petty gossip, no fuel for their bitterness, no confirmation of their delusions. Instead, they were forced to face the one thing they never wanted to admit: their deep, undeniable fear of your potential. Because this was never about you failing. It was about them realizing that no matter how hard they try to discredit you, you're still going to win. At first, they tried to laugh it off, but then the air changed. The psychic wasn't speaking about you as some ordinary person. No, they were painting a picture of a force, a presence, a destiny too powerful to ignore. They described someone with relentless resilience, someone who turns setbacks into stepping stones, someone who refuses to be defined by limitations, someone who doesn't just survive, but rises. And that's when the fear took hold. Because this reading wasn't just an insight into your present, it was a glimpse into your future. A future where you're not just successful, but unstoppable. A future where everything they doubted about you becomes undeniable. A future where they are left watching from the sidelines as you ascend to heights they never even dared to dream of. They had spent so much time convincing themselves that you didn't matter, that you weren't a threat, that your progress was just luck or a fluke. But now, someone who had never even met you was confirming their worst nightmare. You're not just passing through life, you're here to dominate. And the worst part, there's nothing they can do to stop it. The reading didn't expose your weaknesses, it exposed theirs, their insecurities, their jealousy, their crippling fear of being left behind. Because deep down, they always knew you had something they didn't, the will to rise no matter what. And now, they can't unhear it. They can't unsee the vision of your future. They know what's coming, and that fear, it will haunt them forever. Number 9. You're invoking forces you can't control. Stop underestimating protection. They thought it was nothing, just a laugh, a meaningless joke, another attempt to throw your name into the fire, expecting it to burn. But what they didn't realize is that some names aren't meant to be spoken lightly. Some names carry weight, power. And yours? It was never just a name. It was a force, a presence, a reality they couldn't comprehend. So they went ahead, tossing it around recklessly, laughing as they tried to poke fun at you. But the moment your name left their lips, something shifted. The air thickened. The energy in the room changed. What started as an act of mockery became something far more dangerous, a summoning. They had no idea what they had just done, because when they spoke your name, they didn't just call attention to you, they called attention to what guards you. the unseen forces that stand between you and their negativity, the energy that shields you like an invisible barrier, absorbing every ounce of their ill intent and sending it back where it came from. The psychic felt it immediately. It wasn't just a reading anymore, it was an awakening. Their laughter faded, their smirks disappeared, and for the first time they understood that whatever they had intended for you would never reach you. Because you are not just another person, you are chosen. And the chosen are not left unprotected. Every insult, every sarcastic remark, every bitter thought they aimed at you, it didn't weaken you. It strengthened the very force they were hoping to tear down. Their negativity didn't diminish your power, it amplified it. They thought they were mocking you, but in reality, they were reinforcing your shield. And that's what broke them. The realization that instead of harming you, they had only made you more untouchable, that their obsession, their envy, their fixation on you had only worked against them. They left that session shaken, suddenly aware that they had just played themselves in the most humiliating way possible. Because some people don't need to fight their battles. Some people are already protected. And when your name was spoken in that room, all they did was make sure that protection would never leave your side. Number 10. Acknowledge it. Your jealousy is eating you alive. They walked in with smug grins, expecting nothing more than a joke, a light-hearted session where they could reduce you to a punchline. They thought this was just another way to feel superior, to hear something laughable about you that would feed their fragile egos. But fate had a different plan. The moment the psychic began speaking, the energy in the room shifted. The smirk they carried in started to fade. Because instead of hearing about you, the conversation took a turn they weren't ready for. It became about them. And in that moment, the ground beneath them crumbled. They had convinced themselves that their words, their mockery, their constant obsession with you was harmless. Just a little curiosity, a little fun. But the psychic didn't play into their delusions. They exposed them. With sharp precision, they held up a mirror so clear and undeniable that there was nowhere left to hide. "You're not talking about them out of amusement," the psychic said. "You're talking about them because you can't stop thinking about them." That single truth hit like a dagger to the chest. Jealousy, plain, simple, ugly. It was the one word they had spent years avoiding, the one reality they refused to acknowledge. Yet here it was, staring them in the face, leaving them stripped of all pretense. Because deep down, they knew. It wasn't your existence that bothered them. It was what your existence represented. Your strength, your ability to rise despite everything thrown at you, your refusal to need their validation. You thrived without them. And that fact alone was unbearable for them to accept. Every joke, every jab, every whisper behind your back wasn't clever. It was desperate. A desperate attempt to mask the fact that they couldn't stop measuring themselves against you. And now that truth was out in the open, and they couldn't take it back. They left that session shaken, stripped of their illusions, and confronted with the realization that you were never the problem. They were, and worst of all, now they knew that you knew it too. Number 11. You can't touch what you don't understand. Accept your limits. They thought they had you figured out, thought you were just another name, another target, another person they could reduce to a joke. But what they didn't realize was that you were never within their grasp to begin with. They entered that room expecting amusement, thinking they'd hear something embarrassing about you, something they could twist into a joke. Instead, what they got was a reality check so profound, it left them shaken to their core. The psychic didn't dwell on your flaws, your past, or your so-called weaknesses. No, the moment your name was spoken, the conversation shifted, because you are not ordinary. The air changed. The energy in the room grew heavy, thick with something beyond their comprehension. The psychic's expression shifted from playful to serious, and then the words came. Words they were never supposed to hear. You are different, unpredictable, a force beyond calculation. This wasn't just about who you are today. It was about what you represent, the power within you, the resilience that refuses to break, the presence that lingers even in your absence. The psychic didn't describe a person, they described a force, an enigma wrapped in something untouchable, a presence that carries weight beyond what their limited minds could handle. And in that moment, the fear set in. They suddenly understood why their attempts to diminish you had failed, why every effort to sabotage you had only made you stronger, why their envy, their obsession, their fixation on you had never shaken your foundation. It was because you're beyond them. Your essence is guarded, protected, sealed away from their reach. They wanted control, but the realization struck them harder than any insult ever could. They have none. No matter what they do, no matter how they try to understand, to manipulate, to interfere, you remain untouchable. Their negativity? It bounces off you. Their mockery? It only fuels your growth. And for the first time, they saw the truth. They weren't the ones observing you. You were the one standing above, watching them struggle to make sense of something far greater than their comprehension. And they walked into that session believing they held the power, that they walked out realizing they were never in control. You were. Number 12. Know this, your name carries power that will shift the room. The moment your name was spoken, everything changed. What started as a joke, a careless mention thrown into the air without a second thought, turned into something far heavier than they ever expected. The room that had been filled with laughter, smug comments, and casual arrogance suddenly felt different, thicker, charged, almost suffocating. It wasn't just in their heads. The shift was real, undeniable. Even the psychic, who had been effortlessly playing along with their energy, felt it. Their tone changed. Their expression tightened. The atmosphere recognized something before they did. It was no longer a light-hearted game. It had become something else, something they weren't prepared to confront. Your name didn't just bring up memories, it brought presence. The psychic didn't just see a person, they saw a force, something woven into the fabric of reality in a way that couldn't be ignored. There was no predicting this, no preparing for it. The joke had lost its humor. The mockery had turned into silence. The air itself seemed to hum with an unspoken warning. This is not someone to be taken lightly. They wanted to laugh, to brush it off as nonsense, but they couldn't, because they felt it. The psychic's words weren't ordinary. They weren't vague or empty. They carried weight, the kind that sinks into the bones, the kind that lingers. The energy surrounding you wasn't just powerful, it was untouchable. They had stepped into something they weren't supposed to, and for the first time, they understood what that meant. It wasn't about what they thought of you. It was about what the universe knew about you. Their careless mention of your name had summoned something bigger than themselves. A force they couldn't define, a presence they couldn't mock. And in that moment, they realized something that sent a chill down their spine. You were never just another person to talk about. You were something more. They left that room different than they entered, not laughing, not mocking, but shaken. Because now they weren't just dealing with their own jealousy, their own bitterness, their own insecurities. Now they were dealing with a presence they didn't understand, and they couldn't escape. Number 13. Your shadow is more dangerous than you think. Confront it now. They thought they were exposing you. They thought they were dragging your name into the mud, dissecting your flaws, and tearing down your presence piece by piece. What they didn't realize was that every insult, every sarcastic remark, and every attempt to diminish you was only revealing something far more unsettling: their own shadow. They walked into that session convinced that the psychic would entertain their mockery, that they would walk away with a few cheap laughs at your expense. But life doesn't work that way. The moment they brought up your name, they unknowingly turned a mirror toward themselves. The psychic didn't dwell on you. They didn't entertain the petty criticisms or the bitter resentment. Instead, they cut through the facade and spoke the one truth they weren't prepared to hear. Their problem wasn't you. Their problem was within themselves. And that's when it hit them. You weren't just a person in their story. You were their wake-up call. The psychic saw it immediately. The weight of their unhealed wounds, the jealousy they had been masking as jokes, the insecurities they had tried to bury beneath arrogance. They weren't attacking you because of something you did. They were attacking you because your existence exposed the parts of themselves they had spent years avoiding. Your confidence reminded them of their own self-doubt. Your success reminded them of their stagnation. Your energy exposed the emptiness they carried inside. They thought they were bringing you down, but in reality, they were stripping themselves bare. With every attempt to discredit you, they were painting a picture of their own unresolved pain. They weren't mocking you. They were screaming for help. And now they couldn't unsee it. The psychic laid it out so clearly that even they couldn't deny it. You weren't the one drowning in negativity. They were. Every ounce of energy they had wasted trying to make you feel small had only magnified their own shortcomings. They had been fighting a battle against their own reflection, and for the first time, they realized just how exhausting that fight had become. When they left that session, they weren't laughing. They were shaken, because now they had to face the truth. It was never about you. It was always about them. And the question remains, will they confront their demons, or will they keep running? And just like that, the game they thought they were playing turned into their own undoing. What was meant to be a moment of mockery became a harsh lesson, a mirror they couldn't escape. They tried to expose you, but instead they uncovered their own darkness. And now, whether they admit it or not, they will never see you the same way again. Chosen ones, if this resonated with you, like this video, subscribe, and share with those who need to hear it. Stay sharp, stay untouchable, and let your success continue to haunt those who doubted you.